Hello and welcome back to my channel, and thanks for joining me on my solo HeroQuest campaign primer episode. So this is the first after my rather dramatic 2-minute intro, just to surprise the channel and all of my viewers and subscribers. I've decided to bite the bullet. It followed a suggestion from my wife in the car park about a week ago, and I thought, well, this is a great idea. Maybe I should have a bit of think about it. And obviously, I have been doing quite a bit of thinking. So the purpose of this campaign primer episode is to set the scene and invite you to join me in playing HeroQuest as a solo game, using some simple modifications and mechanics to help govern the actions of our heroes. So you probably think, I've heard all this before, Brian. Carry on. The game I'm using is actually it's an old family heirloom. So this came out in the UK in 1989, and I think I got it almost as it came out. I was an adult by that stage. I was almost 20, 25. 26. So I was a bit of a veteran of role-playing, but this game was quite revolutionary. It really captured the imagination, and we loved playing it. Me and my wife and my friends, we all played it. And then when I had children, it became a bit of a family heirloom. It's a very well played game. There's some rather unique paintwork and aesthetic which I have retained, and that is really for I suppose either nostalgic or sentimental reasons and values. I probably at some stage I am going to go on eBay and get a first edition 1989 UK copy for myself as a copy clone, and do all the kind of fancy painting and try to generate as much as the look that I want, but I'll still want to retain this one as our family treasured item. As an example, I've got things like skeletons that are a wee bit on on the simplistic paint side. The good thing about HeroQuest is that the figures are amazing, and they're so evocative that basically any paint job can survive contact with the enemy. This is another one, bit of a yellow, probably very old skeleton. That one. I've got the Chaos Warrior in rather strange regalia there. That's not fantastic paintwork. As you can see, it's probably sort of young hands, and our elf. Of one of our characters. This is probably one of the better characters that we've got, and this is probably the closest I got to something that was reasonably decent. This is one of my orcs that's got a bit of chainmail going on here that looks quite realistic, and it's got belts with little gold on it. Probably this isn't fantastic standard, but it's the kind of old school look I like, and this is probably the sort of set that I would have if I just did it with my clone version. And I do have some more figures like that, but the majority they're either unpainted or they are at a kind of more basic level with primary colors, but hopefully you can see beyond that. Use your imagination, and with all my role playing and explanations, I can take you with me on my journey. So that out the way. Also, the method of filming I'm going to use is that I'm going to use a higher aspect ratio. So that means that I will be zooming out a bit. So I'm not describing it just now, but if you can bear with me, I can do a quick flick of the switch as if by magic on my iPhone, and suddenly we are at a larger that's amazing, Brian. How have you done that? Well, I just pressed a button on my iPhone, the amazing iPhone, that allows me to do all these videos. And suddenly I have got the entire board on. You can see everything. You think, my goodness, Brian, why have you been using that before? Well, I think I had a conversation with one of the subscribers, and they said, well, I can't really see everything on your board. And I've said I've always really quite liked the intimate nature. But, you know, if I get quite used to this type of thing, because it does give you an awful lot more, what's the American term, real estate on your screen. You know, I could be having all sorts of charts and tables all about. It might be an option. I'll be able to do the flagship with HeroQuest and see how I get on. And then obviously I can do this again. I can zoom back in again. So if I want an individual room or to zoom in on something, you know, if you want the figures here and you can see them doing the fighting, or there's bits of furniture and that sort of thing, they're coming through a door, I won't be able to zoom in, but you should be able to get the general gist of the action. And also it has the advantage, because HeroQuest is an exploration game, you do uncover quite a lot of the board. So it's nice to see that all set out. And if characters, parties get split up and they start going in different directions, I really need to capture it. I can't keep on jumping from one area of the board to the next. And it's nice to visualize everything. So that's the mechanic I'm going to use there. I haven't really got a very good way of editing that. As I've said in many occasions, I tend to do my videos in one take, and I don't really do too much editing. So, you know, none of this maybe nice fade out, and then suddenly you're at a different aspect ratio. It might just be a case of what you've seen there. Again, it's going to be a bit of an exploration for me. So if you just bear with me for the first few episodes, hopefully I can get quite slick at it. With the campaign progression, I'm going to play each quest in order. And this UK version, we've got this quest book, and it goes from the first quest is actually a trial scenario. And I think in the American version it's called the trial, and the UK one is called the maze. I'm not really planning to do that. I think that's more just to get players up to speed. I'm coming in with the assumption that you know how to play HeroQuest. It's not a complicated game. And I don't really see the benefit of doing this. As I said, you know, this talks about it being a kind of introductory thing, almost like a trial for the characters. So I'm going to get stuck straight into one of the favourites, the rescue of Sir Ragnar. You know, let's find Sir Ragnar. Let's see where he is. You know, Sir Ragnar was always quite an enigmatic figure in our games, and you just wondered what I think you're supposed to use the Chaos Sorcerer or the Evil Sorcerer figure to represent him, which always seemed a bit of a cop-out. I always really thought you could get a Ragnar figure, and you have a really good knight kind of thing to do. And another kind of idea that I had was maybe bring Sir Ragnar back as potentially even an adventurer further down the line, because I've got this dream of having what I call a knight character in it, and having a band of 5 adventurers rather than just the 4. And I've always really fancied the idea of having a knight as another fighter, but a kind of civilized fighter, a kind of paladin type, with, you know, with the helmet, the big helmet, the great helm, and all that kind of plate on, or good, you know, chainmail with his surcoat and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm digressing a bit. We're gonna go through all of these scenarios one after the other in logical order, and then we move on to Keller's Keep, which I do have a copy of, and I played all the way through myself. So, you know, I've got all these scenarios to do, a quest book for that. And then The Return of the Witch Lord, which I don't actually have a physical copy of just now. I do have this photocopy of it. Probably by the stage we get to this one, I will probably have already sourced a copy off eBay, and I will be using that. I do have an awful lot of skeletons. I think I went onto eBay and I bought about 10 of these. So I've got loads of skeletons. I might be a bit short on some of the other undead creatures, but as I said, I don't think that's a bridge that I can cross much further down the line. It's going to take us a long time to get to the Return of the Witch Lord, which I'm sure I am very familiar with it. I must have played it somehow. I don't know whose version I used, but I remember doing stuff with the Witch Lord a long time ago. So that is the campaign progression. Also, just as a kind of general thing about just the progression of the actual play, I'm going to as we play along with in the scenarios, I'm going to explore HeroQuest as a game. So I'm going to be quite conversational. I'm going to be maybe talking about the lore, the history behind it, some of the aspects of adventuring, some anecdotal references and discussion, a bit like some of my other campaigns where I just tend to digress on things and talk about stuff. And this is very rich. There's an awful lot on the internet with HeroQuest. There's a lot of accumulated knowledge on it, a bit like Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to maybe tap into some of that. Also, I won't be doing this today, but I will be outlining the differences between the UK and the US versions, which are quite extensive. I would say the US version is a bit more sophisticated than the UK one. I call it UK. It's UK and Europe. I'm just simplistic, and I just call it the UK version. The UK version is probably more a basic set. It has things like, probably some of the major differences would be that whenever it comes to a monster, they're only 1 hit point, whereas I think in the American, well, I know in the American one, you have multiple body points for monsters, and you use little skulls to represent the bodies off. So the combat is probably going to be a much faster thing in this, which in some ways might be quite good, because it would just be rattling through these adventures, just killing and not having to do the kind of attritional warfare thing. And also, I suppose the UK one is more geared around exploration, rather than maybe combat and strategies around that. Which is kind of the style I want to do, and is some of what my sort of mechanics are hopefully going to draw out. So as I said, I'm not going to really go to town on talking about the differences today. This will be more anecdotal, and whenever I come to doing a rule that I know is probably different to what a US rule is, I will highlight it in advance, so that you don't really think, oh my goodness, Brian's doing that completely wrong. You've got to supposedly get into the mindset that you're watching an old British person play basically the British version of this game. It's not the modern version, which I think is highly based on the US version. And it's not a US version from 1990. This is the UK European 1989 version of HeroQuest, and that's what I'll be playing. And the only modifications I'm going to have to that, which I will come to, are any house rules that I do. And I think my house ruling has been quite limited, and the house ruling really majors around things to do with the ease of having a solo game and the solo mechanics. So that is that. This is the actual rule book that we'll be referring to, and this is the rules of play. And we have an individual called Mentor, who is the guardian of the lore tome. He is like a sage wizard. He is our guide. He is going to lead us. He's almost like our, as I say, he's almost like our mentor. He's called Mentor. And the other big difference is that I think is it Zargon in is it Zargon, or is I'm thinking of Toy Story? Yeah, it begins with Z anyhow. Is the American sorcerer. In Britain, we had the evil sorcerer was called Morcar. So whenever I refer to Morcar, that is effectively your Z1, which I'm having a mental blank with. I'm just thinking of Zoltan in Big with Tom Hanks. But yeah, it's a bit like that. It's sort of Zor something. So bit of a few name changes. There's going to be a few changes in the rules. It should become pretty obvious what all the differences are by the time I get through a few scenarios. Okay, so that's the rule book. Moving on to the characters. Now, I found out, I was doing a bit of research, I thought, well, what are the names of these characters? You know, if we had to come up with names. And supposedly the common knowledge on the internet is that I think on the original, there was an original draft of the characters, and it's the barbarian, elf, wizard, and dwarf. And these were supposedly the names that they were given. So the barbarian was known as Torin, the elf was Eldaral, and the wizard was Gelric, and the dwarf was Gordon. Now, I'm probably not going to really use the names very much in this. I think, you know, just it's quite an impactful thing, just calling, you know, the barbarian, and dwarf, you know, the dwarf, and they will refer to each other as that. And also, what I want to do is very much bring out the personality and the individuality of these characters in this. So I thought probably a good way to do that initially would be to do some hero introductions. And this is straight from the horse's mouth. This is the way that they would introduce themselves to the channel and to the game and to the campaign. And I thought, I'm not really going to put on, I could have put on an Anders Schwarzenegger accent for this. I could have put on a Gimli, Lord of the Rings accent for this. I could have put on an Orlando Bloom Legolas voice for this one. And I suppose maybe a refined English gentleman for the wizard. But I'm probably not going to do that. I might fall in, you know, as we are adventuring, I might fall into those type of stereotypes as we are narrating. But for the purpose of this, I'll do it in my best English. The barbarian, let's start with him. They call me the barbarian. I don't need grand words or shiny armor, just my axe and the will to crush anything that stands in my way. Morkar's servants, they'll learn what true strength is. Just show me the next monster and stay out of my swing. Okay, so you can imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger saying that. And then the dwarf, I, that be me, the dwarf, don't let my height fool you. There's more grit in one of my boots than in a dozen of those goblin greenskins. I've got an eye for treasure and a nose for trouble, and my axe has a personal grudge against every foul creature in these dungeons. Let's find some gold, then smash some heads. Okay, so that's your Gimli kind of accents, kind of rather Scottish. And then the elf, or Orlando, just think of Orlando Bloom in this. Greetings, I am the elf. The forests are my home, but the darkness of these dungeons holds secrets that call to me. I move with stealth and strike with precision, whether it's an arrow from the shadows or a swift blade up close. And yes, I know a few spells that might just save our skins when the odds turn grim. Okay, so that's our little elf. He's given his little speech. And then finally, the wizard. And I am the wizard. While my companions may favour brute force, I prefer the elegance of the arcane. The very fabric of magic flows through me, allowing me to conjure fire, ward off evil, or even glimpse the unseen. Morkar's power is great, but knowledge, my friend, is the ultimate weapon. Just try not to rush in too much danger before I've had a chance to prepare. So that's the way that they would describe themselves and introduce themselves. So that's they have done that to the channel. They've done that to us, the viewers. We feel that we are kind of getting to know them a bit. But really, what is their actual descriptions, you know, behind all this bravado and facade? What, you know, if we're actually going to do a bit of hard psychoanalysis about their actual characters and what's almost what their type is. I've got some actual descriptions here. And the barbarian is direct, aggressive, and prefers physical solutions. He's about action over contemplation. If it can be smashed, he'll smash it. If it can be charged, he'll charge it. He's less concerned with subtle dangers and more with direct threats. So he is going to be our tank. He's going to be our bulldozer. He's going to be our main offensive weapon. We're really going to have to keep the barbarian under control. And I have some little inflections in my solo rules to represent his rather more explosive and dynamic nature. So, you know, let's see whether we actually succeed in keeping him under control. And then with the dwarf is practical, hardy, and a natural explorer of the underground spaces. He's the most reliable for trap detection and thorough room searches, often with an eye for valuable items or craftsmanship. He's sturdy and dependable. So he's a very solid, reliable party member, very useful in certain, to do with exploration, noticing things, and I'll be trying to draw out those type of traits and abilities as we explore. There's no real kind of rules sometimes for these, but it'd be nice to try and just tease out some of the role-playing aspects of it as we go through, and I don't see any reason why I can't do that. And then the elf, agile, perceptive, and a bridge between martial prowess and magical insight. He's quick to spot things others miss, whether it's a hidden enemy or a magical shimmer. He values discretion and careful movement. Okay, so he sounds a good hybrid, slightly magical, but quite combative, good, and he's also got a few missile weapons potentially up his sleeve that we tend to use. Quite often the elf is used as an archer for long range, and that gives another dynamic to our combat power. And then finally the wizard, cautious, intelligent, and reliant on his arcane knowledge. He'd rather avoid a direct physical confrontation, preferring to understand a situation before acting. He's naturally drawn to magical items, ancient lore, and things that can be solved with a spell rather than a sword. So he's the intellect of the party. He is the magical side. He will be used as effectively can be quite an offensive force, and also very defensive with his spells. That's an interesting aspect of the game, how the spells work. And there's so many moving parts in this that it actually becomes quite a rich game, even though it's quite a very simple premise and very simple mechanics and rules. With the interplay of all the cards and all the different aspects, you get quite a rich experience. And I think that's why it was such a hit when it came out. Anybody could play it, children could play it, adults could play it, and they all got an amazing amount of excitement out of it just through the sheer interplay of factors, interplay of the cards, of aspects of the game, the spell, the magical, the combat. Everything was quite exciting. And an amazing exploration mechanic of having effectively a dungeon master sitting there explaining and putting out bits of furniture and doors and all that good stuff as you went through the dungeon. So next on my list, I've done hero personal introductions, the hero character descriptions. I can talk to you just high level about my solo rules mechanics, and within that I've got my house rules and potential modifications. I've already mentioned that Mentor is our sponsor. He's the Sage Wizard Guide, and Morcar is the Evil Sorcerer, our opponent. And I've also mentioned Knights further down the road. So I've really just got the rules to talk about, and I thought I'm not really going to give too much information about this just now. I'll probably major a bit more on the solo mechanics because I'll be doing them straight off the bat this time. For our first episode, rescuing Sir Ragnar. But I think it might be quite a nice idea just to get a heads up on how I'm planning to play with these characters. So our little party of our elf and our barbarian and our dwarf and our wizard, how are they going to be operating in this dungeon? So the first thing is navigating the dungeon. So when performing general exploration, such as when faced with decisions about direction and which doors to open or what corridors to proceed down, I'm going to create a logical option split and resolve with a simple die roll. Without information, this will be most likely to be a 50-50 split. So there'll be informed decisions. So say we come to a point where we open a door and there's a corridor to our left and a corridor to our right, and there's a door at the other end. I'll just create a kind of split to say, well, the characters decide to go left or the characters decide to go right. And it'll be informed by previous information. So have they got experience of some of the rooms over to the right before? Do they know that? So it's all going to be informed, and it's going to be quite judgmental. But in a lot of cases, it's probably just going to be a straight 50-50. And that's going to cover most of the exploration of just how we get around physically. I'm not going to be tying myself down into infinite mechanics to say, well, there's a 20% probability that whenever a door appears in a corridor, you go down. I'm not interested in that. I want to kind of light touch. I want to keep it moving. I want to have my input into the role play. Maybe have a bit of character dialogue and saying, well, I don't really fancy going down that way. I don't have kind of a bad feeling about that, that sort of stuff. So that gives me the option. When it comes to a specific action, we can employ a slightly more involved process using a mechanic known as an impulse check. Right, so we're starting to get into a bit more of the nitty-gritty now. The core of this rule is reference to the character's tendencies as drivers of actions as opposed to party discipline. So we have a general party view of how we should be exploring in this place. We also have our individual characters and their traits, their tendencies, and how they would react and things. So first of all, the characters' tendencies. Characters will have individual personalities and motivations aligned to their class and race. And the fun of the game will be to see how they operate as a team within the confines of the dungeon. So all these different personalities, how are they going to act as a team? Is it going to be a slick operation, or are we going to have a bit of conflict? Are we going to have the barbarian doing strange, crazy things all the time? Is he going to have to be reined in? Can they rein him in? That type of thing. They will primarily be operating as a party and will have an overall strategy in mind and will follow. So this is the overall driver for them, is their party strategy. And I have something I call an action matrix. So the action matrix outlines each hero's likely preferred actions and reactions and an optimal party strategy during exploration, that's one phase, and in encounters or combat. These are tendencies, not strict rules. Sometimes a situation might demand a different approach, and that is where flexibility and role-playing overrides the mechanic. So I'm going to show you my little matrices. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on them because I'll show you when we come to the actual gameplay. But I have a matrix here called for exploration. And down here, it's got all the different actions that you would do, like opening a door, searching for traps, investigating furniture, that type of thing. And then across the top, I've got the 4 characters. And then I've got something called optimal party strategy. So I have, say the barbarian, is he going to follow optimal party strategy when opening a door? Well, his preference would be to kick it open unless clearly trapped. But the optimal party strategy would be barbarian stands ready to charge, the dwarf or elf takes point to check for traps sounds before opening. So are we going to do one or the other? That's kind of how it works. So I've got maybe the kind of the yin and yang. I've got the kind of conflict going on between the individual and the team based on the type of action. And also I've got this for combat as well. So things like initial monster encounter, target priority, range combat action, spell casting, dealing with a special monster abilities. It's a bit of kind of work in progress, more of this, because I haven't really gone through it in as much detail as I have on the actions, the exploration, but it's the same kind of idea. So I have these cross references that I can do. And when it comes to party actions, the characters will follow a general strategy when exploring and are encountering monsters as a party. So the party action tends to be the override. That's the one that's keeping them on the same page. The characters must be within a line of sight of one another or in an adjacent room connected by an open door to count as being part of a group. So it's all dependent on being a group, or are you on your own? So when an action is required, perform an impulse check for the character involved. So say our barbarian comes to a door, but he is in sight of, say, our elf, so he's classified, he's in the group. The logical option based on the relevant information and the optimal party strategy column is stated and will be chosen unless a 1 is rolled on a d6. So that's the impulse check. And in the case of a barbarian, I'm saying he's more likely to be a bit more volatile. So it's a 1 to 2 for the barbarian, in which case the character acts out his preferred action instead. So say the barbarian rolled a 2, you just ignore it, ignore the party that say, well, why don't you hang back a bit? We'll come up and we'll get more numbers and we'll attack it. You'll just kick the door in and just dive in. That would be the barbarian. So it's that kind of thing that this is supposed to represent. And then we have hero actions. So when a hero is isolated and faced with a situation where an individual decision is needed concerning which action to take, we'll perform an impulse check again by rolling 1d6. You will state the favored option, which will most likely be the party strategy. It might not be. We would probably see what the optimal thing would be. And the hero will follow the favored option unless he rolls a 1 to 4. So it's more likely when they're isolated on their own, they're going to do their own thing. And it's a 1 to 5 of the barbarian. So the barbarian is almost 100%, 1 to 5 on a d6, he's going to do his own thing. In which case the character acts out his preferred action instead. And we don't perform a check if these actually align. So you don't need to perform a check if the preferred action is the same as the character's action. So in case of, say, the elf or whatever, or the wizard, they could be quite sensible about things. So maybe the preferred action is what they would have done anyhow. So it's that kind of thing. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of just how I'm going to be dealing with characters. And let's see how this works. I'm not wanting it to be an onerous thing that's kind of on top of us all the time. I'll be turning it on and off as I see. But a quick d6 mechanic is not really going to do too much, I don't think. And that was the idea, to try and keep it simple and high level. And then with monster actions, we're not going to burden ourselves with any more mechanics, so monsters will be played according to their type and act accordingly. So I'm not going to have die rolls for them. I'm just going to play with them as per type. So the goblin is going to be cowardly and opportunistic. Goblins will swarm the nearest vulnerable hero, but retreat if severely damaged. Another example, let's take the Chaos Warrior. Heavily armoured and highly dangerous, Chaos Warriors are relentless, targeting the most immediate threat with their formidable attacks. So they'll go with what they think is the most immediate threat and focus in on them. A zombie, mindless and persistent, zombies shamble towards the closest hero, attacking with surprising strength despite their decrepitude. So that would be their kind of strategy, the nearest hero, that's what they go for. And then the gargoyle, swift and powerful, the gargoyle flies directly to engage the most threatening hero, delivering brutal blows. So a wee bit like the Chaos Warrior, they will determine who they are probably intelligent, they will determine who they think is the greatest threat. So that is basically my solo rules in a nutshell. One other thing I thought would be a good thing to have is something called time recognition. And this rule is courtesy of the idea I saw. Now, there's a very good YouTube channel called Always Bored, Never Boring. And the chap on it is an absolute fanatic about HeroQuest and Advanced HeroQuest and some of these games. And he's very knowledgeable about it. And I thought this was a terrific rule. Is to represent the passage of time in the dungeon and to emphasize the importance of exploring efficiently. So this is to try and keep things moving along. And if the characters are dawdling, it might not be because of me being slow. It might be the fact that I'm getting some funny rolls and they're kind of spending their time being cautious because of the party strategy. This is a way to penalize that and to say, look, you're going to have to get a move on. So the Malkor player accumulates a skull token. For each turn, he doesn't have a monster on the table. So when it comes to his turn, when it comes to the turn of Malkor, he usually moves his monsters. If he doesn't have any on the table, he will accumulate a skull token. On reaching 5 tokens, he can cash in the tokens for a draw of the treasure card. treasure card pack. If a treasure is taken, this is discarded and removed. A trap and a wandering monster is applied immediately against a randomly selected hero. The invocation will happen with a check each player turn. So I'm not just going to say, right, he's just going to do it straight off the bat. I'm going to have a bit of suspense built in. So the invocation will happen with a check each player turn, with a 1 on a d6 for the first turn, 2 for the second, until it actually gets affected. So you might think, oh, he's just going to do it to the barbarian because the barbarian is always the first. But actually the barbarian will get a 1. He's not going to be affected. It's actually number 4 and it's the wizard. So we didn't really want that. But it's just to get a bit of suspense. And this is the idea was to simulate the monsters receiving reinforcements, having time to prepare more traps, moving treasure to a secure location, that type of thing. So we will remove these treasure cards from the pack. And some other house rules that I've got, I'm just going to briefly touch on. Passing items. Heroes may pass one item or card to another hero in a same space adjacent to them at no action cost. Equipment cards. In the UK game, we have equipment cards that come. It's not just like a list. And there are a limit to what, there are a few that are duplicated, but not that many. So the supply of cards is a limitation as to what is available. So if we go to the store and there's no broadswords left and we want to buy one, we can't get one until it comes back into the store and the equipment cards are used up. Advancement, this is to me is work in progress, regarding improvement in the character's abilities and benefits accruing. However, I do have this champion rule for the time being, which is the standard that after 3 quests you become a champion. So I'm going to invoke that at the start. And then the options when faced with a character's death and replacement, because obviously if one of our heroes dies, how do we recycle another character back in and represent the fact that they are less experienced? That type of thing. So I'm going to have a bit of think about that, how the best way to do that. And also on the outside world and towns, I'm going to have some abstract mechanics to simulate life between quests, and I haven't really done that yet. Fate points. Now a lot of these rules I was just picking up from stuff that I'd done. I must have done about 10-15 years ago when I was exploring doing HeroQuest solo, and I played quite a few adventures just doing that, and I was playing all sorts of different combinations of rules and whatever, and these were some of the things that I developed back in the time, and things like fate points. So on the successful completion of a quest, a hero gains 1 fate point, and they can use these in following quests to take an additional move out of a turn to move and perform an action, or improve the dice roll for 1 result to the desired outcome, or reduce 1 body point of damage. So it gives them a wee bit of an edge, and the next one is kind of like a reward. And it's like the gods looking favorably down on the characters, giving them a bit of lady luck. And then damaged equipment. If a hero rolls all black shields in an attack, they must discard a bolt weapon, and in defense, a piece of defensive equipment. I thought that was a way to penalize, excessive hoarding of equipment, and also get it back into the shop so that it becomes available to buy. And then hazards. When a hero rolls a double 1 when moving, roll an additional combat dice. And if a skull, he falls and loses 1 body point. If it's a black shield, it's blocked, there's no movement or action. And if it's a white shield, he's stunned, he can perform no action. And movement dice must be rolled each turn, even if the hero doesn't intend to move. So that will be my rule that would invoke that. I don't think I really want to. Yeah, these are more abstract things where I was talking about something called dungeon tokens, and then I had monsters' abilities. There were things like Archer, that they could do ranged attack, or a champion warlord type, and individuals that Goblin could steal. The hero loses up to 50 gold. The orc might have poisoned weapons that we could use. Fimir, tail bash. I thought that would be quite good, because this Fimir is, I think that's called an abomination in the US one. We call it a Fimir. We have free counterattack if not killed in contact, and he can bash you with his tail. And the zombie is disease. A skeleton, a slice, may attack diagonally, and the hero loses an additional body point if wounded. Horrible slice with this thing is scythe. Mommy does a curse, and a Chaos Warrior does dark protection, and on. So I do have a few house rules that I'm considering. They're going to be pretty limited at the start. I don't want to overburden everything. I really want to play everything as is. So really that is more or less me finished for this introductory episode. It's really just a case of I can come to the next episode. It will be the quest for Sir Ragnar. That's the Killer's Keep one. That's the wrong one. Let's get Dark one. HeroQuest quest book number 1. We'll skip the maze. I'll probably do some of the introductions because there's quite a bit of lore around about it. You know, these type of things. I'll probably read these out just to give you a bit of atmosphere. And I'm doing to the Legacy of the Orc Warlord. That's not the one. Melna's Mace, Prince Magnus's Gold, Lair of the Orc Warlord, and here we go, the Rescue of Sir Ragnar. So we're going to have this. I'm probably not going to show this too much. I'm probably going to try and keep this off camera, so that you get a sense of the exploration as we progress. I'll be aware of this, and I'll just be putting out the stuff as we go along. So. And this will be the last time you see this. I might be difficult if I've got this zoom aspect ratio. It might be difficult to try and keep that off the page, off the table. I'm going to have to maybe keep it away somewhere. So we're going to be stuck into this the next episode. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this one. I know it has been a bit of a surprise to the channel. As I said I sent out a note yesterday just to say, don't worry, normal service is still resumed. I'm still completely primed in all my other campaigns. If anything, they might just be a slightly slower production rate. But I was really I think when I was kind of trying to get a video out every week for each of my core 4, I did find that quite onerous, and it was really starting to become a bit worrying, and I was just probably moving more to every 2 weeks was being the natural thing and being a bit more manageable. And I think that's the kind of level that I'm going for now. You know, for example, I'm due to do a RuneQuest one probably today or tomorrow. And I probably won't be ready because of this HeroQuest thing, and maybe doing a bit more homes. But it doesn't mean to say I'm not going to be doing RuneQuest. And I thought, right, that's it. Forget it. I've got other things to do. I'm very much focused on it. It just might mean that it might just come out slightly later on the schedule. And maybe get it at the weekend, but that's probably my next project, is to do a RuneQuest one. So it's that kind of story. I want to try to emphasize that I'm not going to jettison any of my games, because the whole point of my channel is to play all these games and to have them all represented on the channel. And I've just found that HeroQuest was a very nice fit for the channel. It represents a very old school game, and because I'm playing the old school version, the 1989 version, it kind of comes within the time span that I'm talking about. And I think it will be a very interesting solo campaign for us to adventure through. Okay, well, just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.